Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. Hope you're doing well. So we appear to be on the verge of a major escalation in the Middle East with huge potential impacts for the precious metals as safe haven assets, for the price of oil and energy, and therefore for the entire global economy. We will take a look at the charts of gold and silver in just a moment. Buy your gold and silver at SD Bullion. Right now, new customers can get gold or silver at spot by visiting sdbullion.com/new. But first, let's cover this latest report from the New York Times. US B-2 bombers are airborne and headed to the Middle East from the US. These are B-2 bombers which are capable of carrying the 30,000-pound GBU-57 bunker-busting ordnance, which is widely speculated to be necessary for a successful strike on fortified Iranian underground nuclear facilities. Now, you combine this report with the buildup of other military aircraft, F-35s and F-22s in the Middle East, the movement of 3 aircraft carriers to the theater, and the large number of refueling tankers which have relocated to Europe and the Middle East over the past several days. And it becomes clear that the U.S. is at least considering striking Iran and entering into this conflict. I mean, the expense of this military buildup is significant, and it doesn't appear to just be a negotiation tactic. Now, the president told us at the end of this week that he would give 2 weeks to decide about U.S. involvement in this conflict, stating that there was still time for negotiations. However, from my point of view, just objectively looking at this, seems unlikely that the Iranians are going to be willing to come back to the negotiation table in light of the fact that they were already involved in negotiations which seem to admittedly have been used as a ruse to get them to drop their guard before the opening salvo of strikes were launched by Israel. So just my take on it, I don't think that the negotiations are going to be very successful at this point if they weren't successful prior to this becoming a hot war. Now, there's a report from Pulitzer Prize winning journalist Seymour Hersh. This is published in the TASS Russian news agency, and he's stating that this weekend will be the beginning of heavy American bombing. Now, I don't think anybody knows for sure, but he is citing his sources inside Washington and among Israeli insiders that this is going to be the beginning of a U.S. bombing campaign on Iran. So that would mean that we could be facing an escalation within hours. The president is scheduled to return to the White House later this afternoon and meet with his National Security Council. So that may well be when the trigger gets pulled. Now, let's take a look at the chart of the precious metals and see what they're doing. First, let's take a look at silver. So silver, this is a zoomed out weekly chart of silver. You can see it's been consolidating in this big orange ascending triangle. Very interestingly, if we break this down to a 4-hour chart, silver recently broke above the top border of that ascending triangle, a very bullish pattern. Then what we saw was it consolidated sideways, broke out of that consolidation, kind of had this breakdown. But what I wanted to really draw your attention to is that once and twice now, the silver price has tested the top border of that ascending triangle and bounced. So that suggests that what was once resistance has now become support. Now, what does Iran and silver have to do with each other, right? What do these two things have to do with each other? Well, don't forget that silver is still a safe haven asset. It is a physical asset outside of the digital financial system, and therefore it has some appeal. Also, physical silver, should an escalation take place, I believe will become much more desirable. You remember what happened when the banks began to fail back in March of 2023? We saw the demand for physical bullion skyrocket. Right now, it's in a huge trough. I don't believe that the ongoing geopolitical tension has been fully priced into this market yet, but depending on what happens over the next 24 hours, that could change significantly. And the paper price of silver clearly is looking like it is set up for a significant move higher as long as this line holds. And thus far, a decline below this line has been rejected already on 2 occasions. Now, I want to look at this. This is the chart of Pax Gold. This is a cryptocurrency that tracks the price of gold. But the difference between this and paper gold markets is that Pax Gold trades 24/7. There is no downtime because it is a cryptocurrency. So right now, over the weekend, the paper price of gold, visible here, is shut down. It's closed. There's no trading going on. And if we switch this to the 1-hour chart, you can see the last hour that gold traded was Friday at 1600, right? Military time. So looking at the chart of Pax Gold, here is that same Friday candle. The price of Pax Gold closed around 33.88 on Friday. What did the price of gold close at? Just below that, 33.68. But look what Pax Gold has done as the weekend has progressed. The crypto price of gold has been rising. Now, it's not a big rise and it's not on any significant volume, but this is an instrument I believe we should have our eyes on as the weekend plays out, because this will give us a hint as to what market reaction may be at the open on Monday. And thus far, we have seen gold functioning as a safe haven asset. When we had the conflict begin a little over a week ago, we saw a sudden spike in the price of gold. It has since traded sideways, consolidated. Seems like gold is waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it too is not quite pricing in the full geopolitical risk here, but that could change in very short order. Now, why should we be concerned about this? Well, Iran has issued a new, fresh warning. Their foreign minister stated that, unfortunately, we have heard the U.S. may join in this aggression. This is his quote. That would be very unfortunate, and I think that would be very, very dangerous for everybody. And one thing that we must keep an eye on is the Strait of Hormuz. And it's not just the Strait of Hormuz, it is the safety of all shipping heading through this region. Now, the Strait of Hormuz, as you can see on this image, is a critical choke point. Something like 20% of global oil production flows through this on a daily basis. At its narrowest, I think it's about less than 30 miles. So should the U.S. become involved, Iran may decide to disrupt the transit of tankers. Already, my understanding is that the insurance premiums for ships transiting the Strait of Hormuz has risen, and that alone will have an upward effect on the price of oil. But if they shut it down, whether they do that through shelling it, through mining it, through some other means that thus far we have not witnessed, then the price of oil has a potential to skyrocket to the triple digits, potentially $120. That's what JP Morgan says. I've heard other estimates, $200 a barrel. There's no way to replace 20% of global oil production. So certainly the U.S. Navy will do its best to keep that strait open. But, as we've witnessed in the conflict with Yemen, that is not always 100% successful. And the other thing we got to watch out for is the Bab el-Mandeb Straits down here next to Yemen. As the Houthis in Yemen, you might recall that the president sort of declared victory in that conflict, and that's been rather quiet over the past several weeks. Well, the Houthis have threatened to resume their attacks on shipping in the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb Straits here, should the U.S. become further involved in the conflict in the Middle East, should we strike Iran decisively. So this has a potential to disrupt all types of global shipping, and specifically with the Strait of Hormuz, energy. That could have severe knock-on effects. We're talking about a potential global economic slowdown brought on by skyrocketing oil prices. Maybe even then, forced intervention by central banks, price controls, a breakdown of oil globalization and having one global market for oil. The potential knock-on effects are alarming, to say the least. So hopefully cooler heads will prevail here, but you got to hope for the best and prepare for the worst, as they say. So at the very least, might be a good time to top off vehicles, fill up your gas tank if you have extra storage. I'm not giving anybody financial advice here, but this is more just general preparedness advice. At least make sure that if oil and gasoline become very expensive in the very near future, that you have what you need for the time being. As it is the weekend, there is no way to get any kind of exposure or insurance in the form of trading relative to the price of oil. So, practical steps are sort of what we are limited to here. If we don't see a major escalation over the weekend, those might be some things to take a look at on Monday at market open. Not financial advice, of course, but there are things like the USO ETF, which track the price of crude oil. So that is a tool that can be utilized to insulate oneself somewhat from a spike in energy. And also, very concerning report from 2 days ago that the Trump administration has boosted monitoring of possible Iran-backed cells in the U.S. And I think that this shows that the potential fallout from a U.S. involvement in this conflict could be broader than just the Middle East region itself. Therefore, one should prepare accordingly. Having hard assets outside of the financial system, making sure you're not entirely dependent on digital assets is probably a good idea as well. I mean, the potential for a cyber attack from Iran or allied nations remains very high. Anything could happen at this point. The situation is ripe for a black swan. Of course, black swans, by their very nature, being impossible to predict ahead of time, it's a tail event with huge outcomes. But if we were ever ripe for such an unexpected black swan event, now would probably be the time. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Are we about to witness a major escalation? Will cooler heads prevail? What's the best way to get prepared for potential outcomes here? I'd like to know what you think, so leave me a comment down below. Thanks for watching, everybody. Stay safe and happy stacking, and I'll catch you next time. Smart Silver Stacker out.